During the COVID-19 pandemic, a number of people gained unwanted and unnecessary weight. According to Orlando Health, approximately 42% of U.S. adults reported undesired weight gain during the first year of the pandemic, with an average weight gain of approximately 29 pounds, according to a June 2022 survey. For Bryan Scudiere, he gained approximately 40 pounds during COVID, and he fell into a deep depression and began reverting back to some of his bad habits, despite the fact he knew how to sell into the 6 to 7 figures. The pandemic caused him to lose it all, and he had to make a pivot in his life. His transformation occurred when his wife took a picture of him during a work celebration, and he had realized he had packed on some extra pounds. Eventually, he cracked the code, leveraging morning routines, cold exposure, hard exercise, quality but disciplined eating was the key for him to make better decisions and to turn around the trajectory of his life. He stopped thinking about aesthetics and started to apply the same principles in every aspect of his life, and during uncomfortable and sometimes testy conversations with his wife, they drew closer, and he began to develop an unbreakable mentality. And now he helps dads do the same. Scudiere had joined me this week to discuss how his unconventional path led him to the man he is today, the role his wife played in his eventual turnaround, and how he helps other dads become unbreakable. I'm Kevin McShann. Let's have this conversation. Bryan, if you're ready, I'll take a moment to welcome you to the program, buddy. And I'm super excited to talk about being an unbreakable dad with you this morning. It's great to see you, and thank you so very much for being here.
Hey, man, thank you for having me, Kevin. I appreciate you.
Absolutely. Now, Bryan, they tell me that you didn't have a conventional upbringing, my friend. They tell me you dropped out of college at 20 to pursue sales and marketing, my friend, and you were able to build that up to 6 to 7 figure salesperson. So I'm wondering if you could start our conversation by telling me about your early days and how it formed you into the person that you are today.
Yeah, 100%. The story kind of goes, it's like your classic. It's almost like very repetitive, right? In this industry, and the people that typically make it, and a lot of them have like these overcoming struggle stories. And I always say, like, I didn't have it the worst. I'm no David Goggins. Like, my parents didn't beat the shit out of me or anything like that, but I didn't exactly have it easy. Like, I didn't get everything that I wanted. I lived on the other side of the tracks. Like, it was just, I grew up always wanting to have more. And I was the kid that I had a lot of friends whose parents did really well. One of my good friends, his parents were like both lawyers, so he got brand new cars and shit like that when he was a kid. And so growing up, I always wanted to be hyper successful. I always wanted to have a lot of money. I always wanted to live like there's a neighborhood where I grew up called Fleetwood, which had all the big houses. Like that was where I wanted to live because I had a lot of friends that lived there. Meanwhile, I'm over on the other side of the tracks, in a modest house. My parents provided. I never went without food or anything like that. Now, when college came around, I never wanted to go to school. I almost joined the Marines. I almost joined the military. I did everything I could to not go to college because I didn't want to. Ever since I was 16 years old, everyone kept telling me, hey, you'll be a great teacher. You'll be a great teacher. And I would tell myself, I'm going to be a great teacher. I'm going to be a great teacher. And then after about a year in college, I realized I'm sitting there in a biochemistry class. And I'm like, what the hell does this have anything to do with being a teacher? And so I started to kind of look around a little bit. Now, fate would have it that in 2008, my dad would lose his job. And so the idea of going to college became way too financially irresponsible. There was no way I was going to take out $75,000 in loans, which was going to be 3 more years of school. There's no way I was going to take out $75,000 in loans to go to college to be something I'm not sure about being and to do something I'm not sure is even going to be fulfilling in my life, let alone to go $75,000 in debt to make $50,000 a year. Like it just didn't add up. It didn't make sense. So I ended up dropping out after reading a book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. You ever read that book?
I've heard of it, yeah.
Yeah, great book, Robert Kiyosaki. First chapter, one of the very first paragraphs, he says the average millionaire does not have a college degree. And in my head, I was like, cool, I'm glad my dad lost his job. Let me go figure something out. He talks about how most millionaires, most people that are making money in this life have a very specific set of skills, and they're excellent communicators. They're very disciplined, and they have sales skills. So fate would also have it that the summer after my dad lost his job, I was on summer break. I was contemplating whether or not I was going to go back. And my buddy referred me to a job with a company called Cutco. If you're familiar with the knives, it's like they recruit college kids to sell stuff, right? Sell kitchenwares and knives and all that stuff. It's an amazing company with a tremendous opportunity. And it's all about growth and communication. And I got a chance to get a job with that. I didn't have any sort of sales experience. I had no interest in going in sales literally the day before. But that day I was like, you know what? People are making some good money. My buddy Mike told me he made like $2,000 in 10 days, which was triple the amount that I was going to make working at the grocery store that summer. And I was like, you made 3 times the amount of money in 10 days that I'm going to make in the next 3 months. He was like, yeah. And I did it just showing this product called Cutco. So he gets me an interview. I go in. I locked down that job, and then I just got after it. I was told for the very first time in my life, I heard the concept of the harder you work, the more you're going to get rewarded. And that blew me away. Because at that grocery store, I was hands down the best guy working there. I'm 6'4", so I can reach the top shelf better than anybody else. I'm a big dude. I'm a strong guy. Like, I was moving pallets. I was working my ass off. I probably was burning more calories in one 8-hour shift than most people do in 3 days. And so I was hustling, but no matter what, at the end of the week, I'd get paid the same amount. I get a taste of sales, and I bring that work ethic into sales, and I wipe the floor with everybody. And so that was how I got started. I then grew within that company. I won almost every single trip that I was qualified to attend. I kind of got every single title right. I was an assistant manager, then I was a recruiting manager, and I learned all these different skills. So eventually in 2016, I got the opportunity to open up my own location. So start my own business. And I had the opportunity to go from being the college kid who was recruited to recruiting the college kids to come sell knives, personally grow, personally develop. And that sent me on a 4-year journey, which was probably filled with more ups and downs than most people experience in 2 decades. I did in 4 years. I'm telling you, like, peaks and valleys, highest mountains and deepest lows. And to the degree where, like, there was 1 week where I locked my door. I didn't think I was even coming back. I was like, I left and I was like, I don't think I'm ever going to open my office door ever again. There was a 4-month time span where I made 0 money. And what ended up happening was right after that 4 months of not making any money, the following year, I was the number 1 sales team in the company. So it all kind of snowballs. I always tell people you can always connect the dots looking backwards, but you can never connect them looking forwards. And so my journey got started very early on in sales and personal development. And I got a chance to start reading the right books and getting around the right people and understanding the environment, understanding my mindset, and starting to build out a process, starting to really hone in like, well, what is the systematic process that, if done repetitively over enough period of time, is going to yield the highest amount of results, and it's going to stop self-sabotage. And so I learned a lot in those first 4 years. And I can continue on the journey, but I want to kind of pass the buck back over to you, and you let me know if you want me to go like all the way to like how did we get here today, or did you just want me to start about talk about the start of my journey?
Yeah, so I know that you're now the CEO of Unbreakable Dads, and I know you help people find sort of their selves again from a fitness life and work perspective, and I know there's a personal tie to why you started the company. So why would you finish the journey of your story and how you got to running Unbreakable Dads today?
Cool. So I look at my life in seasons, right? I had, when you're a kid, 0 to 18, that's like a season of your life. You're trying to figure everything out. And then from 18 to 25, that's another season in your life. And then from 25 to 30, that's another season in your life. You notice they start to get smaller as you go along. And now that I'm past 30, I'm just in a different season. And so when I look back at my life, the way that I literally shifted, like my entire mentality shifted, like the day I turned 25, it's almost like a switch went off in my brain. That was the same year that I started. That was 2016. That was the same year that I started my own company, right? My own business through Cutco, right? I did that for 4 years until I was 29. Ended up leaving. I got an opportunity in off-market real estate, so flipping houses and things like that. Very exciting industry, lots of money in that industry. And my brain was just going, how much money can I make? How much money can I make? Right? I had all this success at Cutco, and I was like, great, now I want a bigger fish, right? I was on the top, and you know who Grant Cardone is?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
Yeah, big name. So I actually, if you go on YouTube, on his channel, there's a video I interviewed at his company. I was on the Ultimate Job Interview show with him. And that was back when I used to do a ton of drugs. And I told him all the drugs that I did, and he like cut it in a weird way. And I when I tell you I flopped, dude, I flopped harder in 2014 on that job interview than anyone else in their life. Like literally, like couldn't talk, fumbling over my words. And so Grant Cardone, at the end of that day, even though he didn't give me a job, he gave me one piece of advice. And he said, never leave a job opportunity, never leave a company, never leave anything until you're the best, because you don't know if you don't like it unless you're the best at it. So what I did was at Cutco, I went and I was the number one office. At the end of that cycle, where I was the number one team in the company, I realized, hey, I like it, but I also don't want to be here for forever. And I could actually trust that judgment because I gave it my all. Like I actually accomplished the pinnacle of the company, winning something called the Silver Cup. So I jumped into off-market real estate. And the real world was very different than Cutco. It was a much different slap in the face. I had to learn a lot of new skills. I learned negotiation at a new level, and I learned how to sell at a level. And also, I was living long distance from my wife. And so from 2019 to 2021, I went through a huge transformational shift where I actually didn't really have as much financial success as I did in Cutco. And what ended up happening was 2020 I ended up losing everything because of our wedding venue and things like that, where they held our deposit, and then I had to get another wedding venue, and it was like the whole big COVID story. I lost it all. And what I fell back on was fitness, right? The only thing that got me through that kept me sharp through all the challenges, all the peaks and valleys between 2019 and 2021, where, I changed opportunities 4 or 5 times. I changed states 3 times in just those 2 years. I changed, I moved locations. It was like a whole big thing. The only thing that was consistent in my life was my morning routine, my morning process, and keeping fitness in my life. And what I found is that becomes the backbone and the structure of making sure that my brain is good and that I'm primed. So that way, regardless of the external circumstances, I can handle it. I can get through it. And that's it. And that's why every single thing, whether you could look at it, it could be adversity. You could look at it, it could be a trouble. You could look at it, it could be a challenge. Either way, I'm coming out the other end better. Doesn't fucking matter. You put anything in front of me, I'm gonna run through it. And it doesn't matter because I have a process that sets me up to win every single day. And that process has been honed and honed and honed for 5 years now, where it doesn't matter. Anything. I've gone through it all. I've had less than $500 in my bank account in the past 5 years. Didn't matter. Don't care. Still got it done. Right? Still paid every single bill. Still made every single payment on time. Still made sure there was a roof over my head. Still made sure there was a roof over my kid's head. All that stuff. Right? Doesn't matter. And so a lot of guys experience these like external circumstances, or that they have these external vices, and then that becomes part of their identity. And they just, shake, their legs shake, their hands shake, and they don't know how they're going to get anything done because they don't have a process that allows them to handle the emotion, handle the circumstance, to show up right. Right? Because they're just like, life is just hitting them in the face. It's just attacking them, and they have no idea how to fucking handle it. I can curse on this podcast. Is that cool?
And that's totally cool. I do it all the time myself. It's one of the ways I find my inner center sometimes. So go right ahead, buddy.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I started Unbreakable Dads because I watched men, especially dads, right? What's the story? What's the story that we're taught? You become a dad, and what ends up happening? A, you become the idiot of the family. B, like, look at every movie, every TV show, everything. The dad is an idiot. He's a bumbling dumbass. The mom is like the sharp one who's like keeping the family together. Dads are dumb. They forget everything. And they're fat and they're lazy. That's the story that we're told. Like, when you become a dad in America, like, that's it. You're the fat, lazy, dumb, bubbling idiot. And so men are literally screaming at the top of their lungs that, like, that's not who I want to be. But it's just being muffled by all of society just telling you that, like, hey, it's okay to get soft. It's okay to, put on weight. It's okay that you should be out of shape. It's okay that you don't take care of yourself anymore. It's okay. And it's not, because your kids are watching. Like, there's no son or daughter on the planet that looks at their dad who's 50, 60, 150 pounds overweight and is like, man, I take that guy seriously. He can't even stop himself from reaching for the Oreos at 10 o'clock at night. But yeah, I'll listen to him. And so men out there are just befuddled, right? They're confused. Like, why is it that, like, I'm doing everything that everyone's told me to do, but I'm unhappy? I have anxiety through the roof. Depression is at an all-time fucking high for guys. Number one in suicides, right? And they feel like they can't provide for their family. They're not present with their family. They're more worried about the way that their t-shirt looks at the beach. They're more worried about, taking their t-shirt off at the beach and how they stand and how they feel and get all jiggly. And they're like worried about, like, they just can't be present on family vacation because they're more worried about their tits hanging out. Like, the reality is, right, it is, men right now are hurting. And I know this from my own personal experience. And they just don't have the tools. They don't have the process to be able to handle these things. And they're succumbing to vices like alcohol, especially now that weed's legal. I mean, it's crazy to me the amount of people that I know that are just walking around every single day, all day long, high out of their mind, just numbing themselves to life. You got young men, young dads who are more worried about, staying up late so they can get some alone time to fucking jerk off and play with themselves, watch porn. Like, they're just succumbing to vices, dumping money at casinos, dumping money at strip clubs, just looking for something, when in reality it's inside of them at all times. But they just don't know how to look. They don't know how to find it. They don't have that process. So I started Unbreakable Dads because in this world, in this society, in where we are at in 2023, we need strong male leadership. We need strong male leadership. We need men to be able to stand up, and we need men to be able to lead their families. The trial runs over. It's game time. And if we don't start to shape up now, I mean, who the fuck knows what's going to happen? I'm terrified for that reality. And so I'm doing everything in my power to stop that reality from happening and to help men and give them tools where they can show up and be unbreakable in their day-to-day, in their work life, in their relationships, right? Diving in deep on, like, how are you showing up for your wife, for your kids? How are you showing up at work? When's the last time you got a promotion? When's the last time you actually did something you were passionate about? When's the last time you felt fulfilled on a day-to-day basis? That's what this is all about. And that's why I got started.
Because, I think there's really strange through vulnerability and showing emotion, but sometimes men don't automatically do that naturally. So I'm curious, what's your opinion through strength through vulnerability?
I think vulnerability is the epitome of strength. The ability to stand in your emotions and actually feel them and not try to numb them and run away from them. And not only that, if you're a married man, okay, your wife is begging for your vulnerability. Your wife is begging for you to be real and honest. And so when you just shut down, you have a hard day at work and you come home and you're like, I'm fine. And then the kids come over and they're like, Daddy, I want to play. And you're like, leave me alone. And you start to snap at them. You snap at your wife because, I don't know, maybe she did something stupid, or, like she not that she did something stupid, but you think that it's stupid because you're all emotionally charged up from your day when really it's an innocuous thing. Maybe she put the dishes in the dishwasher too loud and you're like, can you quiet down? I'm trying to focus. And you start to snap at your wife. And that's just because you're not handling and processing your emotions because you're too afraid of them. Any man that buries their emotions is literally just a coward, right? If you can't be vulnerable and real with yourself, A, and with your wife, B, and communicate those emotions, then you're never going to heal. You're never going to be better. You're never going to be stronger. And you're never going to have as deep of a relationship with your wife as you're capable of. Because it takes balls, it takes gut to look at your wife and be like, hey, I'm fucking scared right now. And this is what I'm feeling. Or, hey, when we get into, a tiff or something like that, like this is how I'm feeling. This is how I'm interpreting it. What most guys do, and what I used to do, this was me. I like fucking storybook, dude. Like the moment any woman in my life, whether it was any previous relationship, my current wife, my mom, anything like that, any woman in my life got a little bit upset, I would shut down completely. I'd stop talking. I'd stop showing emotion. I'd cut off my emotions completely, right? I would be completely disconnected. We could be standing right next to each other and you'd have no idea if I was there if you closed your eyes. And so that was just a triggered response that I would just shut down because I was so afraid of actually communicating, feeling, being vulnerable, opening up my heart, serving it to my wife on a silver platter. And the funny thing is when you just get honest with yourself and you start being real with yourself, you start wanting to be open and vulnerable with your wife. You start wanting to share through vulnerability. And when you do that, I mean, the level of relationship that you can have with your wife, with your kids, with your friends, when you're just real and you're honest and you get rid of that notion that men, need to be this like hardened fucking, listen, there's a time and place where like, yeah, you just need to buck the fuck up and get it done. There's a time and place for that. But there's also a time and place where like, if you're riddled with fucking depression or anxiety and you're just trying to shove that down, you're only writing yourself a prescription for one thing. The one thing that we're all trying to avoid, right? You need to go get help. You need to go talk to somebody, whether that's your wife, whether that's a therapist, whether that's, joining a support group, men's group like Unbreakable Dads, like, maybe go be a part of a community like us, right? Like you need support. And that's why that's why I call Unbreakable Dads a community from the first from the first place. Okay. It's because it's a community. It's not just about like, hey man, if you come work here, you're going to get, work out with us. Like you're going to get abs. Like, yeah, abs are fucking cool. Don't get me wrong. Like I love the fact that like I look great with my shirt off 24/7, 365. It's a level of confidence that you cannot buy. You can't borrow it from a Ferrari. You can't borrow it from a Rolex. But really the passion, the power that comes from Unbreakable Dads is the community. So you're absolutely right. Vulnerability, not only is it the highest form of courage, but it's also the highest form of leadership. Because typically, what we believe is most personal is also the most universal. God, the amount of guys that go, hey man, like when you share your story, like I remember feeling like that. What's most personal is typically the most universal. And so vulnerability, in my opinion, one of the highest forms of leadership out there, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Bryan, I want to share just one story about myself, buddy, and it leads to my next question. So, Bryan, I was born with what's called spastic quadriplegia cerebral palsy. Simply means that I don't have enough oxygen in my legs to walk normally. And I found out at 9 years old from the doctor who performed my last surgery for my disability that I would never be able to walk again in my life without assistance. And the next day, I had to go back to school. And the principal at the time, Dr. Carol Crewley, and I credit this story for being the turning point in my life. I didn't know it at the time, but I know it now. So when I went back to school the next day, she called me down to the office because she knew that I was going to London and finding out that I wouldn't be able to walk without assistance. So when I got to her office, she had everyone that was assigned to my school file, from therapists to teachers to social workers, and my parents were there. And in the middle of her office, she had a big empty space for my wheelchair, and I had went through the story of what the doctor had told my parents and I the previous day in that hospital conference room. And she said to me, the only limitations on your life are the artificial ones that you place on yourself. And I really believe that was the turning point in my life. So the question has to do with resilience and how you view it for dads and yourself personally.
That's a powerful story, man. Yeah, I think everybody needs to listen to your podcast, because there are guys out there who think that because their ears are uneven, that, you know, even though they have a powerful story, they shouldn't get on camera or anything like that. They have all these wild limiting beliefs that they don't think that something's capable for their life. And here you are, Kevin, proving everybody the fuck wrong. And it's fucking awesome. And you're just making it happen. And so I'm really grateful to be on here. But when I think about resiliency, right, when I think about just powering through and just kind of like not having any sort of limitations, is the thing is we have to be brave enough to try to see what the other side is, right? There's something called the law of polarity. Something cannot exist without its antithesis or without its opposite existing as well. Like, there is no such thing as an up without there also being a down. There's no such thing as being indoors without being outdoors. There's no such thing as left without there being a right. And so the idea is that if you are capable of telling yourself that you can't do something, then you're also capable of telling yourself that you can. And so if you spent the past 25 years, 50 pounds overweight, you might just be telling yourself, oh, I'm big boned. I've just always been this way. I always struggle with my diet. Oh, I can't control my eating habits. I can't get to the gym. I can't wake up early. And the reality is, just because you're saying all these things, like you mentioned, the only limiting beliefs are the ones that we artificially put on ourselves. Right? It's just an artificial limiting belief. You just are speaking that over yourself. And so you can start to say the opposite, right? You can start to say, I love waking up early. You start to say, I'm extremely disciplined with my diet. I'm extremely disciplined with my gym regimen, right? It's just a different level of self-talk. And so resiliency starts with the belief that if one can exist, the other has to exist as well. And so I can just choose to believe in the opposite. I can just choose to believe that I'm a bad motherfucker. I can just choose to believe that I can work my ass off. I can just choose to believe that I can wake up at 4:00 in the morning every single day, Monday through Sunday, regardless. Even if I go necessarily mean that I'm wrong. And I'm just going to keep pushing through until the story that's going on in my mind becomes the reality outside. Like, it's just that level of clarity. And resilience comes with clarity of purpose, clarity of outcome, and just choosing to believe that it's actually possible. Right? And don't get me wrong. I get low energy. I get negative states. I have times where I'm riddled with doubt. Like, literally, like, I'll even tell you straight up, yesterday, okay, I had a rough day, and things weren't working out the way that I wanted. I woke up with a certain image of what my day is going to go along, and it didn't happen that way. And so in a low energy state, you start thinking, well, woe is me. Why is this happening to me? Oh, it's not working out this way. Oh, and that negative state is literally just you complaining that the universe isn't getting you what you want, right? That's it. It's your little inner boy. It's your little inner baby who's like, oh, I want it a certain way. And so what I did was I decided that I wanted to actually increase my frequency and get the fuck after it, and literally just dropped down and I did 10 burpees right then and there. It's impossible to be in a low energy frequency if you're doing a high level of intensity workout. You do that, game over. I stood up and I was like, cool, I can get after it. I can still follow through on my actions for the day. I can still follow through on my process. Ended up wrapping up in the last like hour and a half of my day before I went to bed. I had back-to-back new client enrollments, right? And so what I was worried about all day long was, a couple clients decided that they didn't want to work with me. And I started to have a little bit of doubt, do people like Unbreakable Dads? Do people want to be a part of it? And then the last two back-to-back. So listen, at the end of the day, right, you can literally make whatever you want actually happen. You just have to have the resiliency and just choose to believe in the opposite. Right? If whatever your belief is having whatever show up in your life that you don't like, just what's the opposite belief? What's the opposite belief? That's it.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Bryan, I want to talk to you about mindset, because I think mindset and discipline are interconnected. I always tell people that we prioritize the things that are important to us. And, a lot of people look at myself, for example, and they call me an inspirational person, and I simply tell them I'm living my life, but it's all based on the mindset that you have in life. I always tell people that we all have a life compass, and it's incumbent upon all of us to point it in the direction that we want to go in life. So tell me, how do you think mindset and discipline from a fitness and life perspective are interconnected?
Well, see, fitness is just allegory for life. That's it. Because the way you do one thing is the way you do everything. So like I tell people all the time, I actually got into it with a guy. Okay. He thinks that he was quote unquote more successful than me. He actually has no idea how successful I am or not. And he's sitting there and he's speaking like he's, God's gift to the earth, when he's got 3 chins, man tits, and when he sits down, his stomach's practically reaching his knees. I wouldn't trade my fucking life with you for a second. You could have $10 million, and I wouldn't want your life at all, because you're probably low energy, real fucking piece of work, right? I don't care how much. I would never want to be rich and heavy, ever. That would suck, right? So what I tell people all the time is like, fitness is just allegory for life. How you do one thing is how you do anything. And so discipline, mindset, the way you look at that, like your first level of transformation in your life needs to start with you. That's level 1 manifestation. If you can't change the way your body looks, then how the hell are you ever going to change anything else outside of the world, right? So it's all about having what I call like, it's not necessarily about what I do. It's about what I don't do. I look in my life, like I get very clear on like what are things that are happening in my life. What are actions and habits that I was doing that are energy leaks? And what I mean by that is when I do this task, I am lower energy afterwards. This is why I don't drink. Anytime I ever drank, I not only would lose that night, but I would lose 2 or 3 days afterwards. That's why I stopped doing drugs, because not only would I lose that night or that day, I would lose 2 or 3 days after that from just not being locked in mentally. This is why I don't stay up late, because when I do, I lose the next morning. I lose the next day. I'm foggy. I'm not sharp. And so I look in my life, like, what are these energy leaks? A lot of times it's vices, right? For guys, it's like gambling, porn, alcohol, drugs. Those are like the big 4. Video games is like the 5th one. Okay, what are the big energy leaks? What are the things that and when I do them, I have lower energy. And so my mindset is, if it gives me lower energy, I'm not doing it. I don't, right? Why don't I eat highly, sugary meals and shit like that? And I count my macros, and I'm very specific about the types of foods that I put in my body, is because if I eat like crap, I go have McDonald's. That's an energy leak, right? Nobody had a Big Mac and then immediately afterwards was like, wow, I feel amazing and I feel better than before I ate this. And so I'm always looking for energy leaks. And that's the discipline side. The mindset side is like, I'm just trying to fucking win. I'm trying to win every day. I'm trying to win every hour. I'm trying to win every minute. When we started this podcast, I was like, I'm going to fucking crush this podcast. I'm going to be literally his favorite guest. And whether or not this gets the most views on yours, I don't fucking care. That's the mentality of showing up. That's the mindset. And that's how I start every single one of my days. That's how I go into every single one of my calls. That's how I show up in every area. That's how I show up in every conversation. And so mindset, discipline, when it comes to fitness, it's the same thing as in life. You want to win in business? Great. You got to show up and you got to look for the energy leaks. You got to cut that shit out. And you got to only do things that give you energy in business. You want to win in your relationship? Same thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Bryan, just talking to you, I'll tell you that there's a sign in my office that says always active because, when I was younger, my grandparents would always tell me if I don't use my muscles, I'll lose them because as a side effect of my disabilities that my muscles contract faster than most people. So if I don't use them and walk and be active, they retract more faster than most people. So one of the ways I challenge myself every day is I try to be at least 10 minutes active, regardless of whatever I'm doing for the day. I try to be at least 10 minutes active, and one of the hobbies that I enjoy doing is lifting weights and swimming. And I always tell people when they ask me why fitness is important to me, it's because I make it a priority. So I'm curious to ask you for a little piece of motivation for anybody that may be watching this that wants to make fitness a priority but doesn't know how to take the leap and how to do that.
If they don't know how to take the leap, if they don't know where to get started, if they're like, yeah, I want to get into the gym and I want to start to look better, I want to start to feel better, I want to start to dial in my mindset, they need to go to unbreakabledads.com. Apply to work with me. I got a beginner program. I got a foundations program. It's less than $10 a day, right? I'll get you going. I'll get you ripped. I'll get you jacked. 4 months. Easy. Okay. Now, in terms of the mindset, in terms of like having the motivation to actually get after it, what you need to realize, right, is that every single time you look in the mirror, and you know this, I know this, every single time you look in the mirror, if you're not looking back at a man that you admire, if you're not looking back at a man that you're proud of, then nothing else matters. Nothing, because you won't be present with your wife, you won't be present with your kids. And by you not being the best that you can be, you take away from them. You take away from every single positive memory that you could have created with them if you were more disciplined, if you had a better mindset, if you got your shit together, right? And so it's not necessarily about being perfect. It's just about getting going. It's just about getting going. And so just take the first step. Go to unbreakabledads.com. Apply to work with me. If you're the right fit, we'll get you rocking and rolling, man. It's less than $10 a day. It's comical to me that somebody could even remotely say that they have any excuse not to do it. Right? Well, I got kids. Well, okay, so your kids are your excuse for you getting heavy and getting out of shape and getting out of discipline. Like, I want you to go walk up to your son, Johnny, and say, hey, you're 7 years old, and do you see this gut? Right? This gut's your fault. You exist, that's why I'm fat. If you didn't exist, I'd be skinny and fit and disciplined. You would never say that to your kid. Absolutely not. But whenever you say, I can't get in shape because of my kids, that's exactly what you're saying. You don't have enough time? What do you mean you don't have enough time? Did you catch a movie last week? Are you up to date on a Netflix show? Like, do you spend any time outside of work? Of course you do. You only work 45 hours a week, and out of those 45 hours, you're probably only working 25 of them. The other 20 of them, you're just flipping off on your phone or scrolling through on social media. Of course you got time. You can't tell me you don't have time. Money? There's gyms out there for $9 a month. I'm less than $10 a day. You can't, and if you don't have fucking $10 a day to like be a part of a men's group that's going to better you in every single facet of your life, then like you got to look in the mirror of something else, man. You got to like get the fuck after it in some other way. Like, that's crazy. You don't have that type of money. It's not even that much money. Like, there's 18-year-olds that do better than that. Like, come on, man.
Well, I'll tell you, if it's important enough to them, they'll find the money and time to do it, right? It's all
100%.
about what we prioritize in life, right?
Yeah, and if you're not prioritizing your health, then you're just taking away from every single other aspect of your life. And you're taking away from your business, you're taking away from your team, you're taking away from your people, you're taking away from your family, you're taking away from your kids, you're taking away from you. If you're not prioritizing your health, your mindset, your discipline, not only that, you're not prioritizing your energy and doing the right things so you can show up properly every day. You're just taking away from everyone else because you're so worried about you. You're so worried about you. Oh, I don't want to do it because it makes me uncomfortable to wake up at 4 a.m. and go to the gym. Why are you worried about you, man? Your life's not about you. Your life has never been about you. Your life is about what you give to everybody else. And if you don't pour into your cup every single day, how the hell are you going to give to anybody else?
Yeah, it's the same as my view of on expectations, because I always tell people the only level of expectations I have to meet on my own, because if you don't have a fundamental level of personal expectations, then I'm really not interested in really rising to the level of meeting someone else's artificial expectations. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, 100%. I got to look after me, man, and I got to live the life the way that I want to live. And it's all these guys are living other people's lives. They're living by society's expectations. They're living by their wife's expectations. It's like, dude, deep down inside, there's not a man on the planet that doesn't want to be jacked, rich, and fucking like look great, feel great, and be the man that they needed in their life when they were a kid.
Yeah, absolutely. And Bryan, in the few minutes I have left with you, I'm curious to ask you about sort of raising kids today. I know you're a new dad, and certainly societal pressure, as we were just discussing, is bigger on raising kids now than ever before. You know, I'm 34 now, and raising kids now isn't what it used to be when I was growing up. So tell me about being a new parent and raising kids in today's society, and what does that mean to you?
Admittedly, I can't really speak to like the dads out there that have toddlers or teenagers. Well, here's what I can say. Parenthood is leadership, right? So I'll speak on the leadership side of things. I can't speak to like, have this conversation with this kid at this age about this. But what I can tell you is if you're not clear on you, you're not clear on your principles, if you're not disciplined in your life, then there is no way that your kids are going to listen to you to the degree that they actually want to, right? Every single kid out there wants a dad that is disciplined, wants a dad that shows up present, wants a dad that's there for them. They don't want the dad that drinks beer and is like 4 or 5 beers deep on a Thursday night. They don't want the dad that comes home exhausted every single day. They don't want the dad that complains every single weekend. And they sure shit don't want the dad that sits on the couch from Saturday to Sunday because I work all week long. And so I don't want to play or anything like that. You want to know why I know that? That was my dad. Now, he didn't really drink because he's only got one kidney. But, man, I watched my dad work his ass off Monday through Friday. And then all weekend long, he was just grumpy as shit. Because he didn't take care of his health. He didn't work out. And so no kid, and eventually as I got older and I started to become a teenager and I started to become a man, I started just seeing through the holes. I just stopped listening to the same degree that I used to because I just started seeing the lack of discipline in so many areas. I love my father. I do. I love my father deep down. Always, right? We're good buddies. But man, what parenthood is leadership. And so you cannot expect your kids to like honor every single one of your words if you don't honor every single one of your words. If you say you're going to do something, you don't fucking do it. If you were like 2023, it's the year that I'm going to get in shape and you're not in better shape at all, you're not even doing anything about it. Like, how are you going to expect your kids to listen to you? And so when I think about raising kids, when I think about raising my daughter, I'm very, very clear on 2 things. Number 1, what are my principles? Right? What's the way that I live my life? And I embody those principles before I would ever impress them upon my daughter. And number 2, what does it mean to be a Scudiere? What does it mean? What does it mean to be a John Smith? What does it mean to be whatever your last name is. I don't care what it is. But does your name actually carry any weight? Because it does in my family. It does for me. Like Scudiere means something. Like my daughter, for her to have the last name Scudiere, it's a gift. Because I'm the one making sure that that's a reality. And so we're very, very clear. Me and my wife, we've agreed upon two things. What are our principles that we both live by? And what does it mean to be a Scudiere? And that's how I'm going to raise my daughter. And so that way she has a North Star. She's not getting her North Star from her teachers. She's not getting her North Star from the internet. She's not getting her North Star from anywhere. She's getting her North Star from the only two people on the planet that actually care about her. Her parents.
It makes a difference for sure. And, Bryan, I'm wanted to end our conversation by asking you, for you personally, what's the best part about living life, and how do you want your personal and professional legacy to be defined?
Best part of living life, dude, that's a great question. I think the best part about living life, whether it's small or big, it's that feeling of overcoming. That's really where life happens, right? Life happens when you decide that you're going to go after something, and through all the adversity, you get it done. And it's that space just after getting it done where you feel most alive. In my opinion, that's what life's all about. If you were scared about heights and you go skydiving, it's how you feel about yourself. It's your conscience, right? Like that's where life is. If you're living life in incongruent to your conscience, the way like that voice in your gut, maybe you don't even hear it anymore because you've ignored it for the past 40 years. I don't know. But man, the best part about life is just doing the things that you said you're going to do and doing the things that, honestly, that are in the face of adversity, moving towards the hard things, moving towards adversity, and then overcoming it and realizing how powerful you actually are as a man or as a woman. It doesn't really matter, man or woman listening to this. Like there's no better feeling than overcoming adversity. Zero. And so when I think about my legacy, when I think about what I want my life to be about, is I just want to help as many people as possible experience as many moments of overcoming adversity and shifting their limiting beliefs. That's it. Because when I look back on my life, the amount of money that I made, I've been very blessed, right? It pales in comparison to who I've become in the process. And so when I'm dead and I'm in my grave, which could be tomorrow or it could be 50 years from now, or depending on technology and artificial intelligence, could be 250 years from now. Who the hell knows? When I'm dead and I'm in my grave, I want every single person to say that was a man of his word. That man cared for other people. And that man did everything he could to get the most out of life.
Yeah, it's all about maximizing life and maximizing potential, isn't it?
Absolutely. We only get one. We're not renting this body, right? I'm sorry, we are renting this body. Excuse me. Okay? We don't get to keep it. So I'm not treating it like, I'm going to get another one next time.
Yeah, absolutely. And just finally, Bryan, tell me again, if people want to get connected with you, what's the best way they can do that, buddy?
Yeah, they can follow me on Instagram, at Unbreakable Dads, or they can go to my website, unbreakabledads.com. They can get in contact with me on both. Just fill out the form. We'll be in touch within 5-10 minutes.
Fantastic. Well, Bryan, I really want to thank you for the work that you do to really elevate men's mindset, both in life, fitness, and work. My friend, your work in the space and time on my behalf is most appreciated. And I want to thank you for being here this afternoon.
My pleasure, Kevin. Thank you so much for having me on.